record to the computer. I am now recording, which is fantastic. Good evening, everybody. It is wonderful to see you on this day, the 29th. Oh, there's loads of people coming in. Bear with me. I'm trying to keep up with everybody. Yeah, there's a little link there. So if you get a chance, just give me a little response. Those last few people who've just come in, I see some cameras waving up, which is wonderful. So I'm going to take a poll here any second. If you've had a chance to fill that out, that would be wonderful. Yeah, everybody done? Okay, 1903. I am going to kick forward and get ourselves going. I'm going to leave it just in this format for the moment because I'm going to paste in what we've just covered. So lovely to see you all this evening. I hope you're well. It's what a day. It's been a fantastic one out there, hasn't it? I'm sure you're all delighted you're here with me this evening and the sun's shining on the outside and all that kind of good stuff, but we'll make it fun, we'll make it brisk. I do have a 2030 hard stop on this side, so I'm going to promise to get you there. Power outage in Dublin 15, not sure how long I'll last. Maybe it'll come back, Michael, so thanks for letting us know. I am recording. Welcome to session 8. This is 29th of April, and despite the nice weather and the spring on the outside, I'm feeling a little bit like that this evening because it's our last session together. I've had fun. I've finished all your assignments. They all went back into the IOB on Monday. I think there's 2 that just came in since Monday, so they're on my schedule to do tomorrow. So I'm up to speed, bar 1 or 2. I think approved late submissions that came in, so I will be getting to those, and no change on the last 10% that I did over the weekend, but I'm sure we'll come back to assignment. But it's been wonderful to be with you. I'll say it again at the end. It's been smashing, and thank you for your engagements, your insights, your contribution, and most of all, being with us on the program. I hope you're getting a return. Let's check a little bit on that. Here's the poll that I did on our first evening together and on where we might be. So we were kind of gliding, 70, 80% was over on the 5K, couch to 5K and 10K. When we checked on the midpoint, we were kind of left 11% of marathon runners, and we kind of mostly people were out of the 10K into the half. Yeah, but we have a little bit of noise on the line, so if you've got your mic on, you might just check it for me there. That's fantastic. And as of this evening, we have moved further right, which is great to see. I'll include all the sides. So we've significantly reduced the 10K. We've mostly moved into the half marathon and the marathon space. No ultra marathon runners just yet, and I suspect that won't be the case until you get into the next session with Paul. You're really going to enjoy that. He's going to get hardcore into how do you get things done, really get into execution and program disciplines and so on. But look, I hope that signifies a little bit of the journey that we have been on. So I wanted to just cut that in and let you see that before we move on. So we are into the last session this evening on managing digital risk. And we will get through that, as I say, in the next 40 minutes. What I would say to you is, as it's our last session, why don't we use the chat this evening if you have any kind of final thoughts, final questions, final perspectives that you want to make sure we cover before we wrap up. So will you please use the chat, pop in anything, and I'll make sure, depending on how that's ticking, I'm going to keep an eye on it here, and I'm going to make sure that we cover that off if that's okay. So if you have thoughts, have questions, feedback, prompts, queries, general agitation, delight and elation, whatever it is, please share it in the chat and we will take that. I'm going to do really short rolling reportage this evening, but I do want to share with you a couple of references that you might want to have a look at. This I read last weekend. I didn't share it with you on Saturday, but it is a new kind of piece of research that's just been released from EY. Every now and then EY just nail a piece of research, and they've done this very broad, very extensive piece on the sentiment towards AI. Now, I've been tracking this for a little while, but I think it is interesting to see in the report they've kind of categorized kind of four personas: cautious optimists, there's some unworried socialites, and they tend to be the most progressive. And then kind of moving over to the left, you've got some tech champions, but you've got hesitant mainstreamers that are probably a big bulge, and then passive bystanders, and then you've got some AI rejectors, like people who are just kind of really worried about it or are not comfortable with it. And it is just really interesting to see the split. And in the report in general, it is showing that as adoption rates are going, there's a nice correlation naturally to comfort and to kind of usage. And I think the real usage is the real interesting thing, and they do break it down, and there's a kind of a regional heat map down at the bottom. So I won't dwell on it. If you're interested in kind of getting a sense for where the world is, and maybe even just kind of double clicking into maybe the UK, France, Germany, probably would be a good bellwether for perhaps Ireland. It's worth just getting a sense of how are people feeling about it, and recognizing, I think, that there are different personas when it comes to comfort and confidence and utilization and adoption of AI. And as digital leaders, if you remember on my digital DNA, we covered it on Saturday, this idea of always assuring, holding people's hands as we bring them, whether they're customers or colleagues, into the digital era. I think it's important to understand and know where people are at, and maybe what's holding them back from embracing, or maybe what's holding them back from safely entering into the digital world. So that's one to leave with you. Next one I'm going to leave with you is, I read this book about 2 years ago. This is how they tell me the world ends. If you want a really rich but very well written and quite entertaining view into, and it's appropriate to share this with you this evening, into cyber wars, the cyber economy, it's worth a read. The author really gets in, Perlroth, I think it is, or Perlroth, gets into what spies are doing, hackers are doing, arms dealers are doing, what the undercurrent of the world is doing, but also what governments are doing, what ethical hackers are doing, white hats, black hats, all these kind of things. So if you kind of want to open your eyes into the world of cyber, worth the read. Just kind of not summarized here, but you can get really good summaries on most of these books. Blinkist is a really good summary tool if you haven't used it. And the last one I'm going to leave with you on the rolling reportage is this article from Nima Torabi. Was written in 2020, and actually it's pretty much this module in an article that's about 13 minutes read. It's very cleverly constructed, and if you wanted to kind of just do a little bit of a recap, or just make sure you kind of get a lot of the lenses around how to put a framework together for successful transformation. A lot of the stuff that we have talked in this module is very nicely catered for. So if you wanted to, and as you're heading into your last assignment, if you wanted a little bit of a recap, it's a useful little recap to read, very well constructed, and there's some interesting frameworks in it as well. So worth having a look there. Right. So that's kind of it for me, because I want to kind of get into some content and make sure that we've got a little bit of time this evening. We have a good number of people with us now, which is great. How are you all? Looking into the camera, I can see some of you that have your cameras on. Are you okay? Everybody good? Hear me okay? The voice is holding up? See me okay? All that kind of good stuff. Great. Not sure how the power outage is going in Dublin 15, Michael, but hope you're well. And maybe they'll have had the kettle on before the lecture, so you might get that. You might get a cuppa. Who knows? Right. Let's jump into it. There was a little bit of reading in advance. Some of those items I shared with you, like the from The Verge. All around, managing messaging and managing content. We're just to share maybe what's going on, but the only one I'm going to reference this evening is a really good article that did come through from McKinsey. 20, I forget when it was, only last year, maybe a little bit older, but it's about transforming risk efficiency and effectiveness. And these are just some excerpts from it, but a really good read, and it kind of digs into and gives guidance on kind of essentially transforming the risk function, looking through the context and the lens of digital and analytics. So kind of on the top right here, they talk about just in general practice in the digital age as we kind of grow the complexity of what we're doing, and as we're going through such rapid iterations of proposition driven by the marketplace, our organizations are going through rapid iterations as well. And it's kind of illuminating that there are potential risks in role clarity between the first line, the second line, and the third line. And it kind of gets into this kind of line 1.5, and it kind of explores how people are trying to compensate for these things and the pros and the cons of that. But essentially, it looks across through the lens of financial services and kind of illuminates what really is the archetype roles that first, second, and third should be playing. Really useful in that regard if you want to kind of update yourself on modern risk management. On the bottom left, a bit like we do with efficiency, there's a section about how in this era, pre-digitalization, digitalization, etc., that we should be focusing on kind of simplifying our processes, because over time, and especially in an analog world, we're a little bit bloated, and there's lots of overlaps, there's lots of redundant processes, there's lots of policies that can never be removed to guidance as we're kind of becoming more intelligent. And there's certainly a lot of policies, that 80-20 Pareto rule. There's plenty of policies that can be that no longer apply and can perhaps be moved to create capacity for productivity that can be kind of refocused into transformation. And then there's a nice little grid with some research around in terms of prioritizing the risk processes for automation, for digitalization. They're urging that there's an effectiveness impact, there's an efficiency impact that helps give a feasibility ranking. And they're kind of identifying that AML and credit review and so on and so forth. Worth having a read, if only to remind ourselves how we should think about creating backlogs, prioritizing initiatives. So a worthwhile read, and the only one I would kind of bring back and say to you, worth thinking about. And as I'm kind of giving you the key pieces, it's around the key messages around, making sure there's clarity and kind of a tight knit of first, second, third line roles, particularly as we're evolving and transforming. There's the danger of gaps emerging. So, the risk function or the risk architecture needs to be managed tightly as we're transforming. As we're transforming, there's an opportunity for efficiency and effectiveness, and there's smart ways, I guess, to rank where to focus the effort to create the most value about using digital and AI and analytics in terms of enhancing the risk function. So the bottom left is about enhancing the risk function optimally. With the bottom, that was the bottom right. The bottom left is all about making sure that we take waste out of old risk processes as we're doing that. So worth having a think about, particularly for those of you who may well be in risk functions. A few of you actually noting from the scripts that you've sent in. Okay, I'm going to keep moving if that's okay. Do please pop any questions, any queries, any thoughts in the chat as we go along. Again, if you want me to cover anything before we wrap up this evening. Okay, everyone doing okay? We keep moving? Everybody good? Yeah, I'm getting nods of heads generally. Okay, going to keep moving. So, with great power comes great responsibility. It's kind of where I want to start this evening around risk again, because that ancient adage does ring through. I mean, digital has, give us this democratization, this liberalization that I've talked about. But while it's technology grounded, it's so much more than that. I mean, it's the way we think and act, which I try to impart with you. Strategy believes, culture achieves. That cultural component, and it gives us, if we have the right culture around these digital technologies, the ability to create experiences, build businesses, reduce cost and increase productivity, mitigate risk, and ultimately build and grow businesses. And that's fantastic gift to behold. But the inverse is always true, as the logic will denote. The greater the power, it can be used for positive and potentially negative. Maybe intent, but maybe without definite intent. Maybe with a note of caution, there could be consequences of not using digital in a way that's thoughtful and that's risk assessed and adjusted. And it has the power to kind of undo experiences and dismantle businesses. So it has this kind of spectrum of positive and potentially negative effects and connotations. So we're going to kind of spend the evening with that. There's a little story in the slides in the background about Damocles. So it was an ancient character, and he was a servant to the king Dionysus, and Dionysus sat on his throne with a sword over the throne that was just held there by a very thin horse's hair. And when Damocles, his desire was to be king and take the throne, and Dionysus allowed him for a day to take the throne. But when he took the throne and he was, presented with this idea of the sword hanging over him, which at any moment could descend and have drastic effects, he, seen and became aware that with great power, becomes great responsibility. And that kind of just reminds us that, we at the same time, while we could take negative connotations for Damocles, because he just halfway through the day, he said, no, Dionysus, you can take it back. I don't want to be king. It's too much power for me. And we don't want to say that we're living in constant fear. It's not that at all, but it's very much awareness. And the whole idea of the sword hanging is, to be present and be aware and be thoughtful of what power beholds. And you can read the rest of the message there in the background. But that's not the real kind of detail and substance. We're going to get into that now. Because when we think about the technology risk spectrum, talking about Dionysus and so on, and temples need solid foundations. To build our digital businesses, we do need to build those solid foundations. And if you remember in the 9 customer expectations of today, the 9 delights, the little kind of icon that's over on the right that I shared with you in our second session, about what customers want to expect, need and demand today. Trust was at the center, and particularly for financial services, but a number of you are in the pharma industry, some of you in the food sector, and a number of you in the standards sector. So trust is always at a foundation point, and we need to make sure that we're building our digital businesses with those solid foundations in mind, and that necessitates understanding risks. So on the kind of left-hand side, I've given you kind of a spectrum, kind of really, really broad spectrum of potentially where there can be macro risks, and particularly technology risks. So it can be in architecture or business continuity and data, cyber. We've mentioned that already. But actually in change management, in testing, and in introducing new applications and retiring old applications. The more change we have, the more risk we generally introduce into a system. Of course, there's more and more legal and compliance requirements. And as we move in and we kind of grasp this idea of open through partnerships, more partners, more players generally includes more risks. So I'm including these to kind of give you an awareness that we really need to be thinking about technology risks, because again, everything we do we want to code, and there's the fear and the danger. We code risk, consequences, by not being mindful and thoughtful. Now, thankfully, in the realm of technology, there are a lot of really good resources out there. So there's the UN, the US, there's the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, and they have a really, really, really strong framework. You can go and visit, and you can extract, and they guide. And I'll show you some of the material in a moment. They kind of show what a risk management framework looks like for technology risk, and it covers security programs, it covers privacy programs, and again, it helps us, if you care to read it, but it's summarized here. This idea of when we're managing technology, there are there's a whole multiplicity of risks. Some of them are on the left, and on the right we're kind of talking about the security risk management. There's privacy risk management. They're not the same. So security risk management is about looking after access to systems, the use of systems, disclosure, disruption, modification. But when it comes to privacy, that's a different lens. That's about the data we hold on behalf of customers or on behalf of partners, and so on and so forth. And while they're interlinked, they are separate. So bringing to life this idea that we need to manage technology, and we need to be able to manage data, and there are many lenses to look through. So this is given the complexity that sits within digital businesses, this is complex risk that we have to manage. But as we kind of push through that a little bit, and we think about building the right kind of moat, cybersecurity for me, and I'm working with boards and I'm working with organizations and technologists, very definitely this is up there in terms of ranking of importance. And in the slides, I don't need to read them all through with you. And again, this is how the world ends. Earlier on, that book reference is an encouragement to you, and my comments to you about this being, ranking in probably in the top three things that boards that I work with rank as areas of concern, an area of attention. Because the numbers are mind-boggling. Cyber cost, I think it's past, it's going well past 10 trillion this year. There were some suggestions a couple of years ago, and up to 3 trillion, up from 3 trillion in 2015. It's a big business, right? Why is it a big business? Because bad people prey and follow where the money is or where the data is, and as we're digitalizing, that's where the money and the data is. So that's obviously is where we have the attack vectors coming in. For a nice simple way to think about building a cyber strategy, I've just referenced Deloitte, a cyber defense framework. You can go and visit the links and kind of dig into it. But it's at its very basic, it's kind of built on kind of those four components. And obviously it's always about delivering business value and protecting business value. And underneath it, there's a lot of foundational elements like, knowing who attackers are, employers are, and third parties. So they're the contributors or the actors in cyber defense. Right in the middle is this idea of securing our digital estate and our surface. And they call it
Well, that one's, oh no, Scott, look.
Hello there. Yep. I just had a mic on, so we'll keep an eye on the mics, folks. So the idea of secure capability. So how do we protect our technology estate and the perimeter or the surface area, as they call it? How do we be vigilant? So how are we always on in terms of inspecting and understanding the health, any penetration, any breaks, etc., and any hidden elements that come into play, and then resilience for when we need to build for cyber events. And most organizations are experiencing some kind of cyber offense. It's really difficult not to, because of the proliferation of digital data and of course bad actors that are out there. And it's probably one of the the kind of the most common risk areas that does receive attention. And again, NIST, there's some really cool frameworks that kind of guide on how to build strategy. But really importantly, there are some other very helpful kind of publicly available sources that help us to not just sit and wait, and that's not the defense strategy that one recommends, is to be active and in certainly in strong cyber risk management. That kind of constant perpetual active management is critical. And Meter Attack is a very progressive, globally accessible knowledge base. You can just you can follow the links, they're down the bottom there, and you can go in and you can see different versions of what they call matrix, or there's matrices. So there's one for general technology, there's one for mobile technologies, there's one for enterprise technologies, corporate technologies, operating systems. There's different versions in there. And essentially what it does is, for each of those different matrix, which are focused for kind of a different user cohort, it gives you techniques for seeing, understanding and responding in the moment to cyber threats and to cyber actions, and to deal with cyber risk. And it's a very vast database. It's updated. At least last look I had, it was live and continuing to be updated. So if you want to kind of dive into seeing and understanding, where can cyber risk emerge from? Lots of us do our cyber training, right, for our organizations, but we kind of just do our, whatever it is, our 50 questions and so on. I do encourage you to, is a really useful tool to go in and see, what's that kind of breadth, or what's that panorama of what they call indicators of compromise, so areas where we can be attacked in terms of cyber. And what the corresponding actions might be. So it's very informative and kind of eye-opening. So again, good to see there are these resources, and which basically means that there are bad actors out there, but there's really good actors out there, and those good actors are trying to, in the spirit of the internet, are attempting to democratize how to protect the internet. So it's kind of almost an internet psyche that's out there in a positive way. So look, I just wanted to kind of brief you on that kind of technology risk, cyber risk, and show you where some of the resources are that you can kind of get yourself you can read into some of that kind of bottom up technology risk. But I want to kind of flip, if that's okay, because the essence and the reason why I introduced risk at the end is we've gone through the other 9 capabilities or building blocks, right? So from customer right through to open and right through to culture at the weekend. And we're going to come to risk last, because we have to be able to look back in and say, if we're trying to develop new strategies to create new value by building all these capabilities to execute new initiatives, new ways of working, and new ways of engaging the market or helping colleagues. It's not till we see the totality of that we can begin to manage risk. And in this slide and the next slide is really the 2 important ones, and they're very rudimentary. Because risk management hasn't changed from pre-digital to post-digital or in digital. It's just more sophisticated, it's more complex, there are more moving parts, and they're moving quicker. So I would implore to you that being a digital leader and managing digital transformation successfully requires present, thoughtful and active risk management. So in terms of identification, how do we go about identifying? Well, we typically use grids like this. We look in through kind of different kind of lenses. such as users or staff or sales and service that we offer into the market partners, process systems, data analytics, and indeed strategy and change itself. And we say, how could risk emerge? How would we recognize it? How vulnerable are we, and what are the effects of the risk? And this kind of, for me, always was very simple, very rudimentary, but so important. And when we're thinking through our transformation maps, or we're thinking through introducing the new order of things that you've all been doing now in assignment 1, and as you go into assignment 2, it's really important that we're thinking about what's the risk perspective, or what's the risk evaluation. And just lenses like this are really important. So kind of giving it to you, it's kind of basic, it's bottom up, I know, but giving it to you as a reminder and a tool for, this is maybe a good way to start the identification by looking through, people, looking through services, partners, and looking through systems and data to understand where could risk lie. And then typically what we're always doing, but much more actively today than we did before, is we're calibrating that risk. We're identifying response strategies so we understand what the risk is, and that's what the previous slide is. What could the risk be? And then when we understand what the risk could be, we kind of start clicking down and asking ourselves, what's the probability of that risk manifesting? What would be the impact of that risk if it did manifest? And then ultimately figuring out how would we respond to that risk, or how do we mitigate that risk, mostly mitigation, but sometimes it can be just a response mechanism, to ensure that we are comfortable, that we have seen what the risk could be, we understand how it could derail us, we have set in place the right kind of strategies to mitigate it to an acceptable level, and we have a clear owner, obviously, as well. Sometimes you see more complex versions of this, which is, understanding the risk, the probability, the impact, then having a risk response strategy, and then sometimes you have a treated risk, probability, and impact. I haven't included that here. You can dive into that level of detail. But I just wanted to show you the kind of the basic approach and the importance of, I think, is the probability. But actually, more and more, I'm seeing, certainly in the practices that I have, when we look at impact, we're not doing high, medium, low impact. We're understanding the impact from a performance perspective. So that could be to the to the end user. It could be to the brand, the business. It could be the competitive positioning. We understand the cost impact of it, and we understand how long, if that can be evaluated, that a risk may be having an impact, such as an AI bias, kind of reputational damage, could have a cost damage. There are cases, the slower than expected to persist, into some Mark,
sorry, Garvin.
Yeah.
Mark, can you mute yourself, please? We cannot hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mark, you had a question, so I might thanks for that. I might let Mark jump in with the question, and we'll keep the mutes on.
Yeah, just I'm a little bit surprised to see time as a dimension under impact.
Yeah.
I've been involved in things like risk identification and assessment for a long time.
Yeah.
And you can see it across, for example, impact across six dimensions, typically, for example, around doing things like customer impact, profitability, capital, etc.
Yeah.
Usually seen as some kind of over a certain assessment horizon, like a line, say ICAP, for example.
Yeah.
But time, I've never seen it being included as an impact. It's a third dimension incentive, let's say, of an assessment horizon of a particular amount of time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's really about your impact of the other impacts, that there is a time dimension that can increase or decrease the overall impact.
Yeah, great comments, Mark. And I guess the reason why I include it, and I've seen it included more and more in risk management, I mean, unfortunately, you will have seen that, some of the brands that are on this call, some of the banks, we've had, prolonged outages, recently and over the last couple of years. God knows I've led through quite a number of them in my own days of practice. And because we're in a world of kind of, in digital, there's an expectation of instant access, isn't there? And then the idea of evaluating, if an event occurred, DDoS or, a significant payment outage or something like that, having a lens on the time impact, Mark, I have found useful to help people to, really understand the consequences. Because let's say if we have systems out for a couple of minutes, we're only worried about the 99.999 and the 1, 2, and 3 at the end of that versus, system availability for say 80% or 70% of time. That can have a very significant consequence, and your mitigation strategies might be very different.
So what I would have seen, what we would look at is it's through an operations lens.
Yeah.
To that exact point,
yeah.
Is the outage to 2 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, whatever it is. And that's an impact lens as itself.
Yeah.
But that's through an operations in overall, but with a number of what you might call calibrating statements.
Yeah.
And then you select from them as to which one is, if you're looking for a time dimension.
Yeah. No, really like that. And I'm placing it there to encourage people to think about it. And I'm seeing certainly more people kind of active in understanding the time consequences as well as the performance and the cost. Yeah. So thank you, Mark. Good impact. Yeah, good inputs. Okay. Everyone else okay? Thank you, Mark, for jumping in. It's great. Appreciate that. Everyone else okay? All right. Let's keep moving. If that's all right. 1939. We're doing nicely on time. So I mean, really, what's at the heart is saying to you, but understanding technology risks, cyber risks, and so on and so forth, and having risk mitigation strategies. But there's probably some, in my experience now, what I've shared with you prior is more the kind of the protocoled thinking, in my experience, from driving programs, working on programs, helping people with programs. There's kind of a hard and soft kind of risk spectrum that I've seen, and I'll just go through these couple of slides, and you can read them afterwards. But I'll give you the headlines. More and more, as we use more code, and as we develop that code, drop it, test it, and as we evolve it, managing code and managing just even basic files. Again, if we think about the attack surface or the risk surface, definitely worth ensuring, and particularly as we glide towards the cloud. Lots of businesses, integrating freeware. I mean, perhaps you're all doing that on your, perhaps on your work, but even on your home, desktops or on your mobiles, whatever it is. We're all pretty. We mostly have them pretty well protected from various packages and so on. But the more we consume code and files, the greater the risk can be. Really basic stuff, I know, but just to call it out, shadow IT, this idea of spinning up when IT just aren't moving fast enough, tech isn't moving fast enough, so creating that kind of secondary or that shadow IT with and it often happens with applications and capability being installed business side through the cloud and SaaS. Really easy now to provision and integrate in the API world. But it's attractive for sure. But if it's not managed and contained, it can be the rotten apple. Mark, did you have your hand up again? Just to no, okay.
Maybe it's just would you see let's call it accidental, a sharing of of proprietary information through there's a lot of focus on for instance generative AI and a lot of how that's using training to, but if you want to interrogate it in some way and you accidentally go and bring your content in there which is proprietary, or equally as of bizarrely so a notification earlier internally about the use of Grammarly translation tools, etc. We don't have them available. They're blocked, and the reason why, because we don't have, say, our policy being translated from English to Polish, and before you know, Google knows what it is, etc. So just wondering, where does all that fit in this spectrum?
I think it all fits in between, you know, code and file sharing into, you know, the incapacity and knowledge. It kind of runs all through. It's kind of a new, it's a newer one that we're kind of experiencing too, Mark, isn't it? Where a lot of us trying to figure.
That's why I say it. I look at risk identification and emerging risk assessment, so that's why I tend to think of these things.
Yeah, and I'm gonna call it out as well on the next slide. But sorry, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of just awareness as we share and access more applications, as we share more data, the necessity to understand the consequences of that, and to make sure there's the right protocols. That, you know, again, the idea of lack of awareness, you know, control error, you know, human error. It's having that kind of almost that kind of second mind to stop, pause, you know, before I click. And understanding that I'm sharing into or accessing, you know, safe data, safe environment, and that could be for the multiple of reasons. And IP is becoming a bigger kind of focus mark. I think, to your point, if I use, you know, that idea of IP, you know, so people using GPTs to write strategy, to test strategy, to test data, to test insights. So, you know, back to your very point, just that awareness, that knowledge, it is a, you know, the risk surface area is definitely increasing all the time. So hence the necessity. So we've, you know, hopefully you've been reading down through the rest of the slide, folks, around, you know, just look, capacity and knowledge. We often do, you know, skills, and we definitely see lots of organizations augmenting their people with external skills, but, you know, being conscious of the cost, the susceptibility, the sensitivity of that, if it's that it can be persistent. If, you know, self-sufficiency isn't catered for. Bias is, you know, a huge part of training data for AI systems. We're all pretty aware of the necessity to be careful on that now, and to manage that. We've seen lots of cases kind of, you know, get shared. Automation, you know, again, you know, coding bad processes, you know, potentially can be one risk. I'm going to cover that on the next slide. But it's really this idea that, you know, as we're changing, you know, maybe it's automation, maybe it's the introduction of new things, but generally as we're changing, making sure that we have, you know, good management of design, test, and release cycles, particularly as they get faster or more frequent. And typically, as we use more systems and more internal and external systems, it's to make sure that we don't hard code risk into our processes and our business rules and so on and so forth. As we attempt to do the right thing, we could potentially be introducing more risks. So again, you know, bringing to light the idea of making sure that we're thoughtful, mindful, and we've got practices and that kind of, you know, that hover moment to make sure that we understand what we're doing and the risks, and therefore we're mitigating against it. And that really, a lot of that comes down to governance. At the very bottom, we just mentioned about social, because, you know, it's not what we say we're doing anymore, it's what the world says we do, and it can take and run in a moment a story on you, particularly in the social sphere. And that could be around service reliability, you know, your tone, your social media stance, your tone, you know, the treatment of data, again, your ESG stance, you know, just your positioning. Because we don't just say things anymore, we write them, and we write them into platforms that have the ability to manifest them. You know, fake news, of course, is an issue as well to be aware of, not mentioned there. But generally, the whole idea is the more we play in the digital sphere, the more we have to be aware of, you know, the proliferation of what we're doing and being able and ready to counter that, or to manage it and filter it in the first place so it doesn't attract unintended consequences. So there may be some of the harder risks. Maybe some of the softer risks that are more behavioral are the things, again, just from personal experience that I've seen. Don't code the past. In the effort to digitize and digitalize, some people build journeys, but they build them and code them with the complexity that was there before. So the necessity to simplify and take out the waste before we code should be something that's prevalent and dominant in our design approach. I mentioned it before, with the idea of the guiding light and the North Star. As we work towards that, making sure that this more relates to human behavior and the pressure that organizations and people can feel, and the more people are feeling that pressure and feeling stress from having to do more, compete further, keep up with the exponential kind of wave that's happening around us. From a leadership perspective, all the more reason that we help our colleagues, our partners, help the market understand what we're about and keep values to life. And I think I touched on quite a bit of that on Saturday. Breaking the silos is a huge risk challenge, because as we think about collaborating, working in kind of inclusive ways at pace, using code and getting everybody involved, etc. In a transformation setting, power structure silos can be a hidden thing. So hence on Saturday, I was guiding you towards the operating system, which gives you an opportunity to ask the kind of questions is, who holds the power? How do we manage things around here? Who sets strategy? Who's responsible for what? So it's really important. If you don't manage that, those stovepipes and those silos can really get in the way and cause friction in terms of an appetite to change. Creating capacity links to simplification. I've talked about that probably ad nauseum, but capacity is finite, as I say there. The idea being, if we want to move forward, we've got to create the capacity for it. So usually we have to leave something behind. Probably one of the biggest failure points that I've seen on massive, large transformations has been, the desire to gobble up the whole elephant in one kind of big bite or gulp at a time. And what that means is, being over ambitious and overstretching the scope, or compressing timelines, underestimating the human factor, underestimating the risk, all those kind of things. So in transformation, these are more transformational items, definitely one step at a time, sequencing. And that's why we introduced the TMAP. And that's why I'm kind of pushing to get us to think about, what steps do we need to take and what sequence and what's the critical path and what are the key dependencies. Because forecasting those as best we can is critical point number one. And then having the dexterity, which is the ambidextrous piece, to continuously evaluate, adjust, and refocus as we learn through execution transformation agendas. And we'll be covering this with Paul in module 3 for sure. Failure is often seen as a downside. Failure is feedback, and in fact it's the breakfast of champions. Because when we're endeavouring to try new things, as we know from our earliest days in school and so on, that's how we learn, that's how we grow. But it comes with cuts and bruises, and it comes with bruised egos, all those kind of things. And as we grow older, unfortunately, we become more resistant and more cautious to those things through experience, and because of we're maybe more we give more care to what we hold. Letting go of that psychology, I think, is really important. But some organizations find it hard to calibrate, whether it be psychologically, or even in its measurement and its expectations. And we would have talked a little bit about that, of knowing that when we're endeavoring on innovation and experimentation, we've got to have the right set of expectations. And the more we attempt to transform and invent, the greater our expectation should be of failure. And that can really, if that's not calibrated right, and again, managing risk and managing risk profiles, what's the expectation, the probabilities of success, etc. If that's not calibrated correctly, it's another mega, actually, breakdown point of successful transformations. And it's about not joining expectation with reality. So definitely one to hold. Kill distractions, really important, and learning to say no. And it's kind of links to creating capacity. You've got to create capacity to do the new, so you've got to put the old aside. You've got to be really clear, and again, it links to the defining North Star, really clear about what it is you want to do and not to do. So again, as you're thinking of your transformation maps, and as you're thinking about just transformation in general, focus and discipline and the ability to, say no to what might be, appealing and appetizing and new and interesting, and just focusing on the knitting, building from the ground up, looking at the critical paths, key dependencies, and working through and calibrating as you go, really, really important. And the idea of closing the circle by opening it up, I think I would have covered that. That's the whole idea of inclusivity. When we're designing, when we're decisioning, when we're executing, it's about having, all the minds at play to make sure that you've thought through, all the potential opportunities, but also the risks, so that you can fully cater for what may be ahead. And the more minds, the more diversity you have, if you manage that efficiently, the more aware you'll be, and the more prepared you will be. And then the importance of measurement and kind of really understanding, as we're looking to do the new, as we're looking to transform, understanding how we should measure success, measuring it and calibrating it as you go. And understanding, what's not going well, what is going well, and that calibration as you go through, but using data to guide, I think is an important thing. So I've dwelled on that slide a little bit, but a lot of the softer elements of transformational risk in there, not exhaustive, not conclusive by any regard, but when I was thinking about writing this program, they were the kind of my observations of stall points, fail points on a transformation program. Is that okay with everybody? Check in, make sure you're all doing okay. Can't see you, so I'm gonna try and get you up. Yeah, everyone all right? Keep moving. Yeah. Any questions? If there is, just pop them into the chat, or like Mark has done, just pop the hand up, and we'll make sure we get you in. And thanks for those contributions. So the last kind of one or two more slides to share with you, really, and then we'll kind of come to kind of a recap and conclusion. When we're thinking about risks, I mean, I've been trying to give you some specificities, almost some kind of traits and trends, but in general, I always enjoy the risk being annotated as animals. It's not very fair on the poor animals, but sometimes it brings it to life. So eating the elephant. I've touched on that already, but when you think of risk, the elephant in the room. Sometimes there's really large and obvious problems, but just through conditioning of human behavior in crowds, it can often get ignored. So it's really important when you're leading in digital to be ever observant, just in business in general. But this program is all about being a leader in the digital age. So understanding large, obvious problems that can go ignored, and that could be a critical system where we know there's an issue, or it could be we know that our average age of our clients is increasing. These are things that can be going on in businesses, but we don't sometimes stop and call them out. The rhino is the highly visible imminent risk. They might say that COVID was that. They were talking about a pandemic for some time, but maybe the world was a little bit slow to react. It did catch us all by surprise. So, sometimes people think it is the black swan down on the bottom right. It was rare and unpredictable, but, WHO, Obama, lots of people were talking about it. So it's about, again, awareness, acknowledgement, and it's about bravery, actually, to be able to call these things out. So that, the white or the black rhino coming at you is, it's charging at you. And, they say, it's never happened to me, but it says a rhino is coming at you. You sometimes can't get out of the way. You're kind of, you're caught in the headlights or caught in the horn lights. But just be aware that there's sometimes highly visible imminent risk coming at you. The financial crisis, they could say was something that was, we were talking about soft landings and so on, but, did we really know it was coming? The snow leopard is, the hidden, rare, hard to detect risks, and probably I hark back to the importance of cyber and cyber risk management, and 0 days, and malware that can be placed and persist in our systems for long periods of time, can be activated and can be very destructive. So it's about being aware that there are risks that you don't know. So it's the it's consciousness, and being conscious that there are probably risks that are playing out in our business that are rare. Yes, they're hidden, they're hard to detect. So we've got to be extra vigilant and observant, particularly in a couple of fields such as cyber. The black jellyfish is things that we just didn't stop because we were moving so fast to predict and mitigate for. So it was a famous case in Japan where there was an energy power station, and it was blowing hot water into either a lake or the sea. I think it was a lake. I mean, most people, if they stop to talk and think, when you put hot water, and I remember seeing this as a kid, down in Leitrim beside my granny's, there was a power station there in Drumshambo, and when you push hot water into it was Loch Allen, the fish just come and they breed around the hot water. They enjoy it, but it actually creates better microbes and better fish, better food sustenance for them. So that's where we used to go fishing. So it's this idea of, there should be predictable things, but it's about being thoughtful and present to stop and say, what are the predictable things that are going to happen, which is a lot about the risk management I've mentioned earlier on. And then, we have to also observe that sometimes we know the risk and we're denying it. And we're actually running away from it. And again, leadership today is about being aware that in a world that's more chaotic, more complex, that's in a transformation environment, sometimes we don't, and we see organizations, teams, whatever it is, just ignoring or running away and not dealing with risk. We've got to be able to call that out. So look, all again common sense, I think, but very definitely worth sharing that. Okay, it's 8 o'clock, ready to kind of come to a conclusion on some of the material I'm going to share with you. The slides are all up, by the way. I got them up yesterday. I think Jennifer helped to get them up. So the slides are all in IOB Learn. If you just more broadly are interested in the good thinking and practice on just enterprise risk management, COSO, so the committee sponsoring organisations of the Treadway Commission, that very well established and intended group. They've got an enterprise risk management kind of framework. It was launched in '92, updated in 2017. There's addendums that have been happening ever since. Again, if you want to see and look at, the enterprise risk management principles, and the 2022 update was useful because it reflected that we're in a digital age, and they reflected how to think about governance and culture, strategy and objective setting, performance review, and information communication reporting. So in a very practical way, but they've upgraded it to reflect that we're in this fast, agile world, and therefore we need to adjust our risk management to reflect with the greater speed of change, the more change, and the different nature of changes. Business models change, as Mark said, as AI emerges and as we start to see its wonderment, and we need to consider perimeters of knowledge and so on. it's a very good document and a very good resource to go and have a look at. And the last one to mention, you can kind of read this afterwards, link to it, by the way, to the post. So and it kind of I'm sorry, there's an image here from Celent about just global technology and research firm on next generation risk appetite management. So, and I only leave this one in to get you thinking about risk management guidelines and actually thinking about what's appetite look like, because there's very rarely, fully at risk and not at all at risk. Usually there's a risk that could take place, and you have mitigating actions, and that can have, depending on how you treat it, varying degrees of elimination of the risk at its most, or a reduction of the risk. And this idea of understanding risk appetite, I find it not so well thought through, and I've kind of probably, and in many ways, I've baked it into this idea when we're understanding, looking at risk, looking at probabilities, impact, and breaking it down into performance, cost, timeline. It's just about getting more granular and understanding to what degree could we be impacted if this risk manifested, so you can quantify that. And then real risk appetite is we're willing to live with this risk, or we're not willing to live with this risk. That's your risk appetite. Lives either side, where it's in appetite or it's out of appetite. So worth just, if you really want to dig into risk, folks, to jump into that. Okay, how are we doing, everybody? Okay so far? We are going to, if it's okay, move to just doing a little bit of recap, and we can touch in on assignment 2, and then we're ready to close if there's no questions or queries this evening. So we're doing good on time. So again, please, if there's anything you want to cover off this evening, any questions, any guidance you want, pop them into the chat. Nothing in there, so but do take the opportunity. Right, so on Saturday I got a few questions, and I took a bit of time over lunch, and what I'm going to share with you now is kind of the key slides from the last 3 sessions, the one from technology, the one from people, and the one from risk that you want you to use. Sorry, I should have moved to this one first. So what I've said to people is, when you're thinking about answering the question about your technology readiness and what you may need to do to ensure your technology ready for transformation, I've said, it's worth evaluating at the kind of the simple side on the right hand side of this. So how fit is your channels, your engagement, your services? What do you need to do to be fit? Are you, or what more do you need to do? So that's going to be the simple view on the right hand side. If you want to go into more detail, I've said to people, you can start building out a functional capability map that goes into the channels at a greater level of fidelity, or into product finance HR reporting at a greater level of fidelity, and evaluating more at a functional level. So on the right is more an architectural level, on the left is more a functional level. Again, pass, honours version. And a useful way to have a think about your readiness is, do you have the functionality, and are you constructing your technology in accordance with the design principles? So that's why I share those 2 slides to help on the technology evaluation. The 3 slides that I do share and suggest is worth having a think about when we're looking at the people evaluation. So first is leadership. So how fit are our leaders to lead us forward? How strong is our culture, which is why I'm going to bring us back to the DNA, our values. And then I say to people, if you want to really go further on it, looking at the operating system and evaluating how good are we at purpose, authority, structure, innovation, etc., etc. You could use some of these, all of these. You don't have to use them all. If there was one core slide I would suggest you would use, I would say evaluating your values, because back to the iceberg, we act like we think. So if we get the thinking right, the acting tends to follow. And that is, just as important for leaders as it is for the entire organization. If the thinking is right, the acting in the operating system tends to be right. So my anchor slide on people is the DNA of digital culture, but encouraging you or guiding you towards, it can be useful to look at the leadership lens, and it can be useful to look at the operating system lens. None of it's necessary, folks. Can leaving that to you. But if you want guidance on kind of the basic, look at the DNA. If you want to go advanced, look at leadership and look at the operating system as well. And when it comes to risk, this is the last one. When it comes to risk, what I would be suggesting to you, something that looks like this to identify in the transformation that you're proposing in assignment 2, what are the types of risks, how can you describe them, can you identify their probabilities and their impact, and can you suggest a response and strategy and who should own that. You can go deeper if you want. You can get down into technology, into hard and soft. You can use all the material that I shared with you this evening. I'm delighted if you do, but the one slide that I would suggest you have in your assignment is to make sure you have a risk lens that you've put back on. And this is this template is fine. You may have your own templates. Different people have different ones. Some people have heat maps. I'm really happy if you want to use one of those. I just wanted at a simple level like this. This is the basic, but go further as you may want to wish. Jamie, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Apologies, could you just go back to the one with the colours and the wheel on it? I just missed it there. I was taking a screenshot.
Yeah, sure.
Please. That's the one. Cheers.
Yeah. So I shared that on Saturday, Jamie, and just said, look, obviously at the heart of, leading transformation is leadership, and around, the, whatever it is, the 10 or the 9 slices in the pie, I've just set out, this idea that leaders should be, perpetually understanding what's going on, developing a strategy, but really importantly, building a narrative and a case for change and walking the talk, and then really understanding what kind of culture is necessary to, move towards, the strategy and the vision that they're encapsulating. But it's more than just vision. It's really down and coaching around, educating and illuminating, the why, the what, and the how. It's really hands-on leadership, embracing diversity and inclusion, but beyond that, embracing partners and the ecosystem, and then setting out about driving these ambidextrous roadmaps, the exploits and the explores, and having the dexterity to be able to do that, and then just to, with energy to push through, sustainable change, to lead that sustainable change. So, just a lens to help you to have a think about, is that what you see? Do you see that in the mirror? Do you see that around you? As a base case. Again, not exhaustive, not conclusive. You may have other views on it and so on. And of course, everyone should think about stretching this and bending this. But I'm leaving it with you as a good starting point, Jamie, for this idea of building perpetual energy, and leading from the front through strategy, through communication, through coaching, inclusion, and guidance, and through just perpetual pushing for learning and execution. Does that make sense, Jamie?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much.
Not at all. Well, thank you. Okay. Dog is nattering away here in the background. I'm not sure if you can hear him. You can't see him. I can't see him, but I'm not sure if you can hear him. So if you can, forgive me. Okay. And again, just going to check in on the chat. Nothing there. If there's anything you want to chat through, folks, just jump out, shout out loud, please. So, question in there for Grace. Let me answer that, Grace. Is there any problem if we focus the technology risk spectrum instead of risk calibration? Are you saying, Grace, that you'd rather zone in on technology risk as opposed to broader business and macro risk? Is that what you're that what you're suggesting or saying?
Yes, because now, I saw the slides before, so I already, complete that part, but now with your explanation, it's slightly different. I would say it's more focused like a different way. The risk calibration is more
Yeah.
like saying,
Yeah.
the latency and stuff like that. And overall, at the beginning, so I don't know exactly what do you want.
Yeah. So I guess I'm sharing the kind of the the technology, the hard, the soft, business risk management, etc. I'm sharing all that with you because I think that's that's all part of the necessity of transformation. Have a think about it. If you do nothing, then just be inspired or be informed, or if your knowledge is moved forward by the material and by the lecture, brilliant. If you do get a chance to do a more holistic piece in the assessment, great. More equals more more points, right? But if you've done your technology risk, that's really good with me. If you want to add more, great. So it's fine as a base case. But you know that I have to interpret it, and I'll interpret it according to what the whole kind of knowledge that I've shared with you. So if it's not there, I can't mark for it. So I will mark up all the time, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So that makes sense, Chris.
I will change something then. Thank you.
Not at all. Thank you. Okay. Great. Okay. So I have put a pack in the portal, which is an assignment to study guide. And what I've done is I have put in this page. I've put in this page, and this page. So they're kind of your base points for doing assignment 2. So in here, I'm just giving you the guidance, and again, what I'm looking for, what we need, not what I'm looking for, what the institute looks for. I just have to teach it and mark it, is no more than 1,500 words, a cover note, an executive cover note, which is a pre-read for your 10-vector assessment and your corresponding roadmap. So really, there's only 2 slides that I need. It's the minimum requirement, is that one. Where are you? Where should you be? What do you believe needs to be done to get there? And then a transformation map. You can use this version, or you can use the linear version. I know some of you are working with different versions already. So really, all that I'm looking for is 2 slides, one of these, and one of these, or one of these, whichever version you like. Now I'll come to you in a second. Let me just cover this piece off, but I have you logged there. So once you've done your 10-vector assessment and your roadmap, a cover note, as if you're writing it to the executive board or the executive team. And then I want your kind of stakeholder communication plan. Could be up to 5 slides. 1 slide is fine. Please do include it. Try not to not include it, because if I don't get a cover note, if I don't get either of those 2 slides, or if I don't get a stakeholder communications plan, I can't pass you. So they're the minimum requirements that I have. So I need the 10-vector assessment. I need the transformation map or a roadmap. I need a cover note, and I need a stakeholder communications plan. What I'd love you to do is kind of build the stakeholder communication plan as your case for change, but as a minimum, you should be in there looking to say, who are all the people that are interested and influential in terms of getting my transformation map approved and over the line. And beyond that, if you can think about what is your messaging, what's your vision, how would you sell it? If you were at an all hands day, forgive me, with your organization, if you were making your big pitch, your one chance, how would you sell it? So that's what I'm going to ask you to think about there. Joe, sorry, I didn't get you earlier. It was just in flow. So
no, it's all right, Gavin. Don't worry. No, just a quick one. Those 1,500 words is summarized with the first assignment, is it? Because we got 7 done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, you can carry.
And says there that no more than 1,500 words. It's not could we're gonna get marks if we overpass that?
No,
Because you know what I mean. Like sometimes it's hard to complete.
I know.
What
Yeah.
yeah.
No, don't worry.
Short the words to make sense.
I'm not doing word counting, so don't
All
worry.
right, yeah.
I'm not doing
All
word
right,
counting. Right. Now, if you turn up with 50 pages, I'm kind of going to go, okay.
No, yeah, not saying that I'm gonna write a book or anything. Just
Yeah. You know, so look, for me, it's a guide, right? So I'm not word counting. People aren't word counting. Don't worry about that, right?
Cheers.
But yes. I mean, you know, the whole idea of doing assignment 1 was to get you well on the way for assignment 2. So I expect you to be carrying some of that through. You might be refreshing in it. You might be kind of synthesizing it. You definitely should be joining the dots between
yes
with risk, with technology, and with culture and people. So that's really where, you know, you're going to work it forward now with the full context. But definitely, I'm not looking you to rework. Just bring forward and adjust as you might want to into the final assignment. Is that okay, John? Good.
Oh yes sorry. Yes,
Good.
thank you.
Brilliant. Just can't see you there, so all good. Grace, you have your hand up. How are you?
Sorry for disturbing you again, Garvan. It's actually to clarify what Joao asked before. So you would like to get like a cover note, adding the 3, you know, I don't know, the 3 insights like you give it now, like technology, risk, and people, and then the transformation map, like explaining what we decided and everything.
Yep.
Okay, so that's perfect.
So
and plus letter to shareholders should be okay.
Yeah. So there's 4 things, Grace, just to come back at it again, that you need as a minimum, right? So the first thing is and I would do them in this sequence, if this is okay. Okay. So the first thing you need, item 1 is you need your 10 vector analysis, because that's your baseline, where you are, where you want to go against the 10 capabilities. So that's the first thing I would do. Then plot that onto a roadmap, either version that I've shared with you. That would be the second thing that I would be doing. The third thing then is summarize in 1,500 words what you're proposing needs to be done and why and how. And the fourth thing is love the way Joe explained that, your letter to the shareholder, your Andy Jassy letter. So your proclamation of ambition and intent, but it's got to include this. You've got to identify your stakeholders in there as well. So 10 vector analysis, transformation roadmap, cover letter, and communication plan, which includes stakeholder analysis. That's the basic requirement. And it's up to you how deep you go from there. The deeper you go, the more you learn. As you know, that's always been my encouragement to you. Forgive the voice; it's given up now.
That's very cool, because I thought in the cover note, in the third, requirement, what I did was, sorry.
Grace, yeah, we're good.
Oh, sorry. In the cover note, what I did was the same, like explaining like technology rich, and then I started to explain the transformation map, but it's fine. Like, yeah, as you say, like if we can add as much as we can, like it's fine for me as well.
Correct.
That's everything.
All good. Okay, everyone, is that okay? Okay. Just going to check the chat. Yes, I have written to. Thank you. I should have mentioned that at the start. I have written to the IOB. I did it on Sunday morning when I was up trying to upload everything. All the videos and the stuff from last Saturday didn't get uploaded until, I don't know, today's Tuesday, either yesterday evening or early this morning, because it wouldn't accept my upload, so I had to get the Institute uploaded. And I think all went up yesterday evening. I did also pass through the request for extension. Haven't heard back. You'll hear back, I would suggest, before I hear back. But it is in there, and hopefully you will hear back shortly in relation to that. I will send a little chaser this evening after I hopefully upload the video and let the Institute know to let you know that the video is uploaded. So leave that with me, but expect to hear on that soon. Damien, how you doing?
Hi, Garvin. So on the last assignment, we're outside of the 10 vector analysis that we did, or the 7 at that time.
Yeah.
You know, for those of us that also went into additional slides, say for the digital engagement framework or efficiency, etc.
Yeah.
Some of that might have been looking back, not as much forward as you mentioned previously.
Yeah.
So now when we're doing this one,
yeah.
and you're talking about refreshing it, like, is it a good opportunity here now when we do our roadmap to come back at those, start looking a bit more?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So some of you, I did, yeah, absolutely, Damon. I give you guidance. You kind of looked at where you've come from and where you are, and what I'm suggesting now is, and obviously you'll need to do it if you're doing a roadmap, is what's next in the context of, you know, the strategy that you're pursuing. So what do you need to do next to execute a strategy in the digital age? So absolutely, Damon, spot on.
Thanks, Garvin.
Yeah, if that helps, great. Okay, super. So then there was a question there from Sylvia. The results for CA1, as I understand, they're not due out for till next week. I've given mine in. I sent them through on Sunday evening. But I think for some of you it may be dependent on if some of you are doing dual modules, i.e. with data and analytics. They might be waiting for that. But it'll either be this week or next week. If you desperately want to know, I will ask as in my follow-up this evening, I'll ask the Institute to notify you when to expect those results. Mine are gone in, as a couple of late submissions are coming through. I'm going to grade those and send them in as well. So if your submission was late, it might take a few more days to get your results back. I'll ask the Institute to revert to everybody on the extension and also expectation on results. So Sylvia, sorry I can't tell you any more than that, but I'll follow up with IOB in relation to that. Yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you.
Not at all, thank you. Yeah, all good. Okay, everyone. 2024, everybody okay? So I think we covered off. I just had that in there to remind myself to, if there was anything else in the chat. I think I've covered off anything, but if I haven't covered anything, last chance in the last 5 minutes to have a look. And other than that, for me, an opportunity to say, mind how you go. Thank you for being with us. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for your participation, your questions, queries, your feedback, and so on. And maybe if I could just leave you with a more personal thought. I mean, you know, lots of times we talk about, you know, corporate longevity, and it's becoming a more challenging world to be persistently successful in, because the pace of change on the outside is obviously accelerating all the time. And look, that's a factor, right? My brother is married to a Japanese lady, Lena, and I some years ago started to try and understand Ikigai, and I did it in response to this idea of corporate longevity, because the Japanese, and particularly, you know, some pockets and communities, but the Japanese generally have got the highest number of what they call centenarians, and people who live more than 100, and they a lot of the time they, you know, connect that back with this code of living that they have called Ikigai. And it's the idea of Ikigai is about culturing and harnessing and blending, you know, the world around you and being present and thoughtful about it, to make life what you want it to be, to make it productive, to make it enjoyable, and to make it special. But there's actually, the more I looked into it, I kind of understood that there's some codes that they live by, and on the bottom right, I've just kind of extracted some of these Japanese codes for living and kind of related it back to the mayhem that we all sometimes feel in this transformational world and environment, and the idea of exercising the mind, you know, and the idea of positive mental stimulation, because when you're under stress and duress in transformation programs, it's really important to carve time out to allow you to think, to be stimulated, and to see the opportunity. And it also links to the idea, as you were doing, to maintain learning and testing and stretching your thoughts and capacity. Imperfection is a thing called wabi sabi, and it's this idea of the Japanese celebrate, you know, the knots in wood and the curvature lines when there aren't straight lines, you know, and it's to celebrate the nature and it's to accept. But celebrate imperfection, and that's linked to just failure all the time through learning and innovation. So that's what the growth mindset is in kind of modern thoughts. I think the importance of community, or mao, as I pronounce it, I may have that wrong for any Japanese speakers, but it's the idea of habitually gathering in groups in Okinawa. I think it's an island off Japan's main coast. That's where they have the most centenarians, and there they gather. Everyone gathers in the morning and bathes in the sea and so on. And this idea of, you know, belonging and friendship and community, for emotional, for, you know, financial, for any kind of support, but definitely for emotional support. And it's the idea of, you know, being together and moving together. I found that a really important dimension of working through tough transformation challenges. Time and space and flow. I'm sure you've all come across and you've all experienced flow, whether when you're running, when you're maybe writing a presentation or a document, or maybe when, you know, you're just enjoying a walk, you're enjoying some nature. It's allowing yourself to be fully immersed. But, you know, the Japanese are very famous for getting up early in the morning and creating time for flow, creating time for peace, creating time for space. It's harder to do all that in a more hectic world, personally, and I've, you know, worked with teams and in transformations where, you know, creating that time, creating that space, and allowing, you know, yourself to get into flow, really, really important to kind of, you know, rejuvenate and energize the kind of the spirit. Morita therapy is an idea that when you're stressed, if life does get the better of you, to extract yourself from the world. And there's a Morita therapy. It's actually there's a method and a process when folks get, you know, overburdened by the world, and it's a detox. It's a detox from the world. It's to extract, and it's to build out again from a point of strength. Sometimes that is necessary. And then a lean diet, nushigushi, or nushi gusai. It's in Japan. They eat with their eyes, and they create plates that look like the rainbow, and it's that idea of variety. And I think in our lives we need to have that variety, but in our endeavours, we should have a good dollop of reality, good dollop of challenge, kind of good dollop of everything, and balance for me is critically important for as an antioxidant. So I just want to leave you with those couple of thoughts, and it's 20:30, and we'll move to a wrap up unless there's anything else to cover this evening. And again, just to say, it's been wonderful being with you for the last 8 sessions. Hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to your assignments, and thank you very much for some of your messages that are coming through there. I'll hang on and see if there's any questions in it, but other than that, formally we're wrapped. Looking forward to your assignments. Reach out to me if I can do anything for any of you privately, and I really do wish you well in your endeavours, and thank you so much. Okay, everybody.
Thank you so much, Garvin.
Thanks, Garvin.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Everyone.
Thanks, Garvin. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Garvin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Garvin. Bye. Thanks,
you.
Garvin.
Thanks, Garvin.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Gavin. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thanks, Garvin. That was great. Really informative. Thanks.
Thank you, Carol. Very good.
One second that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paulette. Yeah, thank you. The chat's here. Okay.